Good morning, it's Monday morning. I'm Sandy,
And I'm Lisa.
and this is Monday Morning Live. Good morning and welcome back to Monday Morning Live. You could call us the stand-ins today because Sophie's gone on holiday and left us to it, and as you can see there's been a few gremlins in the system this morning yet again. But we'll get there, won't we, Lisa? We've got this morning.
Indeed.
It might be Monday morning, but it'll take us a little bit of time to get started. So this morning, Lisa, what's our theme this morning for this morning's Monday Morning Live?
Right. So today we're going to be talking about discipleship or being a disciple.
So I suppose the question we've got to ask is, what does that actually mean?
Right. Well, generally, if you're a disciple of someone, you perhaps follow them as a person or their teachings or their personality. But in this sense, when we talk about being a Christian disciple, we're talking about how the process that someone undergoes in order to become more like Christ, basically.
I think one of the interesting things is when I googled it and you stick in discipleship into to the dictionary, it's one of the 12 as well. You're one of the 12.
Right.
I think that's really cool. Shall we show this video? Because we've found a kind of cool video, haven't we, for this morning?
Yes, let's watch it.
So let's show this video now.
For the last 10 years, mother ducks have been nesting their young in an enclosed courtyard at Glover Elementary School in Milton, Massachusetts. But after the babies are born, the mama has to bring them to water within 24 hours, and the only way to get there is through the school. The first babies were born last week, and the school children lined the hallways and had to remain quiet to help lead the new family directly to a nearby pond. But to Principal Sheila Cuxtis' surprise, on Tuesday morning they heard a duck knocking on the window, waiting to be led with her 11 ducklings. Cuxtis tells InsideEdition.com that they didn't even know that the duck was there, and the entire school quickly lined up for the duck run. The elementary school even has a webcam to monitor the ducks. If they are born over a weekend or on a holiday, Principal Cuxtis will go to the school and let the ducks out. This isn't only a wonderful educational opportunity for the students, but helpful for the mama ducks. Be sure to watch Inside Edition.
That's pretty cool, that video. I must admit, when we seen that one, we quite liked that one, didn't we? Now, I also have got to say, I've got a bit of personal liking for some ducks. For years, I worked in a school, okay, and we also had ducks that came to nest in our pond, and it was so cool. They were right outside my office window, and they were just there. But Lisa, what's that got to do with discipleship, do you think?
Yeah. Well, first of all, they were very cute, definitely.
Yeah.
So it's kind of obvious, right? I mean, following the mother. So the idea of being a disciple is following, in the context that we're talking about, is following Jesus. And I noticed that they were all very tightly, kind of clinging to her as they were going across. And I think that's an important point, that we are safest when we're closest to Jesus, really. I don't know if you noticed in the video, there's one little one that was a little bit behind, and he was struggling to catch up, and he fall down a few times, but yet he struggled, but he still managed to keep up. So I think that's important, even though it is a struggle. And at times we do fall, get back up and keep following, really.
And I love the way that the school nurture it as well, that they know these ducks are going to land in the school garden, but there's no pond. But actually, it's them that guides it as well. And I think it's all of our responsibility. Yeah, okay, we might be one of those little ducklings following Jesus, but actually, it's wider than just those that are really close to Jesus, that actually our job is to bring people in as well, isn't it?
Indeed.
And I suppose that you might argue that there's a bit of a confusion between apostle and disciple. Lisa, what would you say was the difference between an apostle and a disciple?
Well, I'm actually going to read a little bit from what's called the Youth Catechism, or UCAT, I guess is the abbreviation for it, and it kind of looks a little bit like this. This is actually I don't know if you can see that. It's actually the youth prayer book, but the whole UCAT series. So they've got a Bible, they've got a catechism, they've got a prayer book, and various things. So anyway, it's written specifically for young people. So from the UCAT, it says that so an apostle then is the 12 men that Jesus gathered around him when he was on earth. And these were the men that Jesus specifically trained, and he commissioned them to share his good news, to share the gospel. So the apostles were the ones that Jesus invited to the Last Supper and to do this in memory of me. So that's an apostle. So a disciple is anyone in our day and age who's trying to follow Jesus and trying to become more like him and live life the way he did. So people like me and people like you.
So we're all disciples of Jesus, really, aren't we?
Indeed.
And I suppose, what does being a disciple, or what does discipleship mean to you?
Yeah. In a certain sense, I think it's kind of a natural process, because if you think about it, if you grew up with older brothers and sisters, I mean, and you always kind of want to follow them, follow what they're doing, you follow their example, good and bad. And then as you get older, you kind of look up to the older kids in your school, perhaps. When you go off to uni and you're training, I was training as a musician, so I very often would listen to people who are professional musicians. I was a clarinet player, so I would listen to all these professional clarinetists, because you're trying to become more like them. You're trying to follow them. So you see what they do. You just are looking at who's better at this than I am, and how can I become more like that.
And I think for me, there's also something about just being the best you can be. And I think you've hinted at that. You look up to people, don't you, in many ways. And I think for me, discipleship is about me living my life to the best of my ability. Because actually, that's what God wants for each of us, isn't it? He wants us to live our life to the full. Let's not waste any time. I mean, I don't know about you, but I am prone to a bit of procrastination. I think we all are at some point. And for me, that's when I'm sort of like, we all fail at times as well, don't we? And I think it's important that the apostles themselves, they weren't perfect. So actually, God knows, Jesus knows that we're not perfect, and I think that's really important to remember as well.
Yes, and you're right. Just doing the best you can at that moment with what you have. That's all we can do, really, especially in this day and age. We don't have much control over anything but ourselves and the day that's given to us.
And I think also for me, the important thing for a disciple is actually not being afraid to share that with others. A bit like those little ducks quacking with each other, let's go together. I often think, now this might be, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, Lisa, but it's often easier to be a disciple with other people. The hardest point to be a disciple is when you're on your own.
I would agree with that. Definitely, because as I said before, I mean, you're inspired by people around you. Their own life witness and how they're trying to live their life. It is inspiring, and it does spur you on, I would say.
And hopefully we're inspiring people somewhere. You never know.
Yeah.
So this week we've got an important feast day coming up for the church. The 1st of October is the feast of St. Therese of Lisieux. That's hard for some people to say. However, I had to do a bit of Googling for this one, because in the book, and I've lost the books here, in the book it says something different. So on Sophie's script I read one thing and I was reading something else in the book. Now today, Lisa, you've also given us another name, because in the book it says here St. Therese of the Child Jesus.
Oh yes.
So tell us a bit about that. Tell us a bit about this feast day that's coming up.
Yeah, so this feast day. So St. Therese, she was a remarkable young woman. She was, she was born in France, so she's a French teenager who entered the convent at kind of a young age. Let's see, we're talking probably the late 1800s when she was born. And she had many brothers and sisters. I get the impression that she was a little bit of a spoiled child, perhaps. And probably when she was I don't know, 13, 14, she was suffering through a quite painful illness and had this miraculous recovery. And after her recovery, not only was her body healed, but she, kind of alluded to maybe her spirit, her soul was healed as well, because she decided that she didn't want to be as selfish as she was before, and she really wanted to follow Jesus more closely. So her two older sisters had joined the convent, the place where nuns lived, and she wanted to follow them. The problem was she was only 14, 15 years old, and she really wasn't old enough by all rights. So she somehow or another manages to get to Rome, and she asks the Pope to give her permission to join the convent. They're called the Carmelites, and he said, well, do whatever, the superiors at the convent tell you to do. So they accepted her. So she enters a convent, and even though you're in the convent doesn't mean that you're a completely holy person, because the nuns there, they looked on her with a little bit of suspicion, because, here's this teenager and, has gone to Rome to get permission, and who she is, and, kind of a little bit of gossiping going on. And so Therese, she's is thinking about this, and develops this way of, she looks at herself as, well, I can never be, a great saint or a great person, but I am, who I am. And so but I can do small things with love. And so what she would do then is, whenever these sisters would start gossiping or whatever, she would just smile. She would continue to treat them kindly. And they noticed this. And so Therese is also known for establishing this little way, she calls it, in that it's something that everyone can do. We can all aspire to follow Therese in this little way, which is doing small things with love. So we don't have to be, this great saint going out to, far off lands and evangelizing, whole cultures. I mean, you just do it in a small way with the people around you. And so her writings then about this have really helped the church's teaching and doctrine, so much so that the church declared Saint Therese a doctor of the church, which is, as I said, as somebody whose writings have affected the church's teachings or doctrines in a significant way. And I think there are only 33 doctors of the church.
Oh, wow.
And so she's one of two. I think the other female is St. Catherine of Siena. So I think there's two female doctors of the saint, doctors of the church, Therese and St. Catherine, I believe. So that's a little bit of St. Therese.
So really, you can say she was a disciple.
Oh, indeed.
She was following Jesus her whole life.
In her own way. Yeah.
And I think that's really important, isn't it? That it's a very unique way. And I think she was called to live it in that very unique way.
Yes. And we all are.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I think that's really, really important, that each one of us are called, as we are, completely unique on our own, to follow Jesus.
Yeah.
So, there's a video to watch. I'm just going to slide straight into this video and we'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
I'm just too busy.
I'm just too young.
I'm too old.
I'm already married.
I'm just not good enough.
There are a lot of reasons why not to answer God's call. We look at our lives, our imperfect, unprepared, even sinful lives,
Was that too long?
and all we're able to see is what's missing, what we can't do. How could God use me, we ask? There must be better people. Judging ourselves by the standard of our world, we respectfully decline God's call and hope that someone else will answer it. But God doesn't choose people based on the standard of our world. So often it's not the strong, the knowledgeable, or the perfect that He chooses. It's the weak, the unexpected, even the broken ones He uses to show His glory. Elizabeth was too old. Moses wasn't a good speaker. Jeremiah was too young. Rahab was a prostitute. Mary Magdalene had 7 demons. Jonah ran from God. Peter straight up denied Jesus. And Lazarus? Lazarus was dead. To say that we're too old, too young, too busy, or too much of a sinner to accomplish great things on our own might be true, on our own. But while we're sitting here focused on all the many things we can't do, the many ways in which we are not good enough to accomplish incredible things, we forget one fundamental truth. It's not about us. Having a call from God is not about who we are and what we can do. It's about who God is and what God wants to accomplish in and through us. As He has shown time and time again, it doesn't matter if the person thinks she or he is qualified, wants the job in the first place, or in the case of Lazarus, is even alive. All that matters is that God knows who He can use and calls them to share in His work of building up the kingdom. Maybe God is calling you to use the gifts you've been given to make the world a better place for everyone to live, especially the poor among us. Calling you to share the amazing things you've learned to enlighten minds about the wonders of God and the universe He created. Calling you to work with integrity and virtue, doing jobs that no one else wants to do for the betterment of society and nation. Calling you to live with kindness and peace, building up the human family through love and forgiveness. When it comes to being called by God, there's no such thing as being too young or too old, unworthy or unprepared. And it doesn't matter if you're single, married, or a celibate like me. If God has a job for you, all that matters is that you have the courage to say yes and the trust to follow wherever He may lead you. And who knows, maybe you'll end up wearing brown, just like me.
Apologies for the slight error at the beginning of that video. Technically, on Monday morning, nothing's really working very well, so we'll get there eventually. So, that video, I think what it's saying to us is like what we've just been talking about before, is that we are all called regardless. Now, I love the phrase that God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. And I love that side of it. And that was what we're basically being told there, is to answer the calling of God. And I think that's what we all try to do every day, isn't it, Lisa? That you try to answer the calling that God's given us.
Yeah, I think so. Although I will say that I have met people who are maybe a little frightened of that call, or maybe they just think, really? Me? I don't think so, and they kind of run away. But I think it's important to realize that God just has our best interests at heart. He's not ever going to call us to do something that's going to harm us or hurt us in any way.
And sometimes it does take courage to really respond to that call. And I think that, so earlier in the week, Sophie had a chance to interview one of her friends who has taken up that call. And I think what's important to say is that many of us have accepted a call. Some of us to different ways of life, some of us to religious ways of life. But at the end of the day, regardless of what we're called to, God is saying to us, accept it and see where it goes. So let's just watch this interview that Sophie did earlier in the week.
Hi Nick, it's really good to have you with us today. Thanks so much for joining us on Monday Morning Live. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you live, and what you do?
Well, hey there, Sophie. Good to see you. It's good to be with you. So my name's Nick Guiney. As you could probably tell from my accent, I'm not from the United Kingdom. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with Cleveland, but it's just like a normal city in the U.S. And I'm currently living here in Indiana at the University of Notre Dame. So the University of Notre Dame is a large Catholic college, like 12,000 students total. And it's known in America for its American football team. It was actually very sad. Our game this Saturday was canceled. So everybody, the like mood on campus has lowered. Everybody loves American football here and loves the Irish, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. But yeah, it's also just like a prominent Catholic university, and it was founded by my religious community, the Congregation of Holy Cross, in the 1800s. And yeah, so now I'm here and I'm studying in the Master's of Divinity program.
That's so great. So you know this, but my husband's from Ohio as well, so he's excited that I'm talking to another Ohioan today. And one of the things he misses so much about living in the UK is college football. So normally his family would all like get together on a weekend and watch football, but either it's not happening this year because of obvious reasons, or the time zones just wouldn't work. And also, I don't like sport, so we don't watch it in our house.
Yeah, well, growing up, I didn't have a choice. I mean, Saturday mornings were Notre Dame football. Like there was, my dad was a big fan and my mom was a big fan. So it's kind of cool to have them come here now and see games in person. So.
Yeah, so you said you're part of a religious order. For people who don't know what that means, what is it? Yeah,
so a religious order, they can be priest brothers and sisters. My community has priest brothers and sisters, but we're not a diocesan. We like the local bishop is who is in charge of us in the local area, but we're under the Vatican. So in the 1800s, our constitutions, the life we follow, the rules we live by, was approved by the Vatican. And so my community, there's apostolic and monastic communities. I know like there's both apostolic and monastic communities in the UK, but here we're apostolic. So our primary work is education. So we run colleges in the United States, and as well as high schools in mission territories that we have, like Haiti or Bangladesh or India. But yeah, so as religious, we take the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. So I took those. It's just a little over a year that I've been in vows, and we live in a community. So here I live with 60 other young men who are studying to be priests and brothers in Holy Cross. And really, for each community has different charisms, but my community's charism and how we serve the churches, we say we're educators in the faith. So that could either be in parishes where all our parishes have schools, or in our colleges and high schools.
That's cool. So how did you know that you wanted to go to seminary, or that God wanted you to go there? What was that like for you?
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting question, a really good question. I grew up Catholic. I went to a really large parish in Cleveland, and we had a really thriving youth ministry program. My parish would do a fall retreat and a spring retreat, and about 400 people would sign up. Only 300 could go, but like 400 people would sign up. So there was a huge wait list. If you didn't turn in your forms on time, you just didn't go. Like it was, everybody wanted to go. But because of that, like thriving youth ministry and really like holy priests and sisters that would come and help on our retreats, it was really commonplace for people to encourage friends to pray about the priesthood and religious life. And when I was in high school, we had 10 young men in the diocesan seminary. But I went to the Catholic Jesuit high school, and I was really struck by the joy and the zeal and the community life of the Jesuits there. So I did not feel called to the diocesan priesthood, and instead felt that God was calling me to the religious life, really because of the community aspect. Communal prayer, communal meals, and like not being sent alone to a parish somewhere. That's just seeing my like pastor alone. It's just, I knew I wasn't called to that. So, but knowing, I guess just a constant encouragement of family and friends really made me take it seriously. When my priest said you should think about being a priest, it was like, well, he said that to all of the guys. But when your friends, who like he was also saying it to, would comment on it, that's really when I started to explore it more. But ultimately, I was really just encouraged and inspired by the zeal that of young religious and young priests that I met. Yeah.
I probably should have said this at the beginning, but Nick isn't just somebody like rando that I pulled in to be on this video. We've known each other for 5 years now, and we served, helped out. We're like camp counselors at this big Catholic camp in Georgia 5 years ago. So it's been really cool to see you, Nick, from then, and like your journey. I know we don't get to chat all the time, but you know, it's really cool to see that group that we were with at summer camp and everyone still talks and everyone's still friendly, and to see the different journeys and vocations that everybody's on. Like you're going through seminary, we've got friends who are married with kids, we've got friends who are sort of like exploring a single vocation. That's super cool to see all the different ways that God calls people to serve him in different ways.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, I think it's super inspiring to see young Catholics who are willing to like explore the different vocations, and then really like I feel so affirmed in my vocation because of like your marriage and like our other friends' marriages, or if they're studying to be religious, or if they're living a single life. Like I'm really inspired by that, and I think I learn a lot about my own vocation through others. So yeah, I think that's really cool.
That's quite interesting, isn't it? That actually there's a young man there that's following his vocation. And I think that's really important to say that yes, there are people out there who have followed their calling in life as priests, as religious, but also as lay people. And I think the calling, like for instance, our call to work with young people, I think that's really important as well, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, definitely. And we're all called in our circumstances in life, whatever that is. As you're saying, as a married person, a single person, and even within that vocation, like for us, trying to serve and reach young people.
And I think that's really important, that when we say a calling, it's a calling to everybody, that just to live our lives to the best that we can. So we're going to finish now with a little bit of reflection. So we're going to have a bit of scripture, and then Lisa's going to give us our challenge at the end. So let's just take a couple of seconds now just to bring ourselves into God's presence as we hear this scripture. Now, what do you think? There was once a man who had 2 sons. He went to the older one and said, "Son, go and work in the vineyard today." "I don't want to," he answered. But later he changed his mind and went. Then the father went to the other son and said the same thing. "Yes, sir," he answered. But he did not go. Which one of the 2 did what his father wanted? "The older one," they answered. So Jesus said to them, "I tell you, the tax collectors are going into the kingdom of God ahead of you. For John the Baptist came to you, showing you the right path to take, and you would not believe him. But the tax collectors believed him. Even when you saw this, you did not later change your mind and believe him." That's an incredible passage there. Lisa, what's your thoughts on that one?
Well, in terms of what parable might mean, is that we can say we'll do something. We can say yes, that we'll do something, but what matters is actually doing it. So it's important for us to be faithful to the things we say we're going to do and the promises we made to people, most especially to God.
And I think that's so important, that again, going back to our theme for today, to be honest and true disciples, we've got to live that life like that, don't we?
Yeah.
And so, Lisa, what's today's challenge?
Today's challenge is mindful of COVID rules and regs ever. Try to offer your help to someone specifically, perhaps in your environment, in your world, at school, at work, to help them, and then actually do it.
Something simple, isn't it? To actually reach out to somebody, obviously, like we say, COVID safe. But there's so many ways we can do that, isn't there?
Yeah.
Be that just reaching out to somebody via text message, WhatsApp message, whatever it be.
Yep.
I think that's so important. And I think at this time as well, it's so important that we do reach out to each other. Because
I would agree. And we can follow St. Teresa's little way. Just
And-
it's the small things done with love that count.
Yep. And I think that's so important right now. We're in 6 months into this now. Things are changing, life's changing, and I think just doing the little things really, really well is really, really important.
And it means a lot as well. It does.
Definitely. When you reach out to somebody else, it does. And sometimes they don't always show you how much it means to somebody, but actually it's in here, isn't it, that's really important.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Lisa, I've really enjoyed this morning.
Me too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Just
very
a couple of things before we finish. Don't forget that we are on all the social media platforms. And also, if you are on YouTube, don't forget to click subscribe and ring that bell, because if you ring the bell, you get the notifications when we come back on live next time. So it's been great this morning. Lisa, thank you for dragging me through this and getting us through there. It's not been the easiest this morning. We're going to have to do some editing once we're finished.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And to all that have been watching, thank you very much for watching this morning. Don't forget to like and subscribe the videos. And we will see you on Wednesday. The Clergy Cafe is an education spin on it this week. So we've got our Episcopal Vicar for Education and also our RE coordinator for the diocese as well. So we're going to be looking at what it's a bit like to be in schools and the support that the diocese is providing to our schools. So join us for that on Wednesday at 4 p.m. And apart from that, keep an eye out on social media. We will be back next Monday at the new time of 9:30. So don't forget to join us then. Thanks for joining us and have a great week.